Hello, it is Neil Romanek, and you are watching and listening to the Flint podcast. I'm the editorial director at the Flint. Happy New Year. I have with me Ben Schwarz, who is the new head at Greening of Streaming. Hello, Ben.
Hey, it's great to be here, Neil.
Greening of Streaming, we're going to hear a lot about it today, but for those who don't know, Greening of Streaming is a really significant organization in the media industry working on making streaming video and video delivery more energy efficient, less wasteful, greener. And that has ramifications not just for the media industry, but we're all using video all the time for everything, it seems like. So if you can solve some of these problems in video at the base level, that can have a big effect across different industries in terms of sustainability. So Ben, thanks so much. Maybe do you want to start by sort of telling us about greening and streaming, just kind of assuming that people don't necessarily know, may not necessarily know what greening and streaming is. Although within the industry it's pretty well known. But how did it start and how did you come on board?
Okay, so it started about 4 years ago. Dom Robinson is the founder, and luckily for me, he's staying on board and he's going to help me. And he's been helping me for the last 6 months with a sort of gradual handover, bringing me up to speed with everything. He comes very much from the CDN space and was running a series of conferences on CDN topics, and the topic of sustainability came up in a presentation, and he made a presentation called Greening of Streaming, and it was very well attended and successful. And at the end of that meeting, people said, "Hey, we've got to do something about this," and so it was a sort of spontaneous creation about 4 years ago, and it took them a couple of months to set up the structure. And if you go to the website, you'll see the list of members. There's currently about 20 plus paying members and another 10 or so affiliate members. And they're actually in order of arrival. So the first two lines of company logos you see there are the founding members. So we have some key industry players like Akamai is a founding member. But we have other large companies like AMD, and we've had Intel, and we've got some very active members in the space. Tech providers like Broadpeak. I won't name them all, but they're all on the website. And yeah, so that was the starting point. There's been a lot of thought about what actually it should be the mission. So one of the early successes, I'd say, of the organization was to realize that there's something quite counterintuitive going on. People were saying intuitively, therefore, that well, why don't we just reduce the amount of data, the amount of video we're pushing down the network? Surely that would be good.
Hmm.
Let's reduce bit rate. And we did some measurement and realized that actually it doesn't really make any difference. I mean, telco guys know this, that when you're actually going through the network part of the video delivery, it's the capacity that drives the
Hmm.
energy, not the usage.
And
Uh,
this is actually, just sort of pause here, this is actually kind of a major point that is, again, it's intuitively we think, oh, if we just like make my video package, like if I'm sending an Amazon package, I'll just make it smaller and lighter, and then that will have less impact, right? I mean, that just seems really obvious, but that is not the case.
it's hard to understand because yeah, intuitively you'd think that, and it is and it isn't the case. It isn't the
Mm.
case in real time. Say you and I, at the moment, we're having a Zoom call, which is using a couple of megabytes, and we are both paying a few tens of dollars, pounds, euros, whatever, to our ISP to be able to have this service, and that money is being paid to give us capacity, and that capacity is available 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. And whether we use it for this small usage or not won't make much difference. So if you and I say, hey, let's be cool and let's make this video a bit shorter, it won't actually make any difference to the
Mhm.
planet. from the network perspective.
It's a
However,
bit it's a bit like if I turn on a light in my room, but I have a shade over it. So, whenever I need it, I take the shade off and then I put the shade back on when I don't need it.
I
Is
never
it a
thought of that.
similar
That's a
idea?
really cool one. I like that one. The one we normally use is public transport. It's
Mm,
typically you're trying to be a green person and be good to the planet, and you're just about to go from one point to another, and it's only 2 miles or something, or two and a bit kilometers. So you say, I can walk this, and I'm going to save whatever it is, 12.5 grams of having not by not taking the bus. The reality is the bus is still going, and you're not actually making any consequential difference to the network. Um, but that's just the but. I said it. Why it's quite complicated is that network planning is something that takes multiple years. Sometimes network providers provide up to 5 years in advance, how they're going to evolve their network capacity. And so if all consumption was to change and usage, and we have some sobriety, then that network capacity planning could take that into account. Because at the moment we're still projected to have double digit growth in streaming, and therefore even with the improvements in codecs and stuff, we expect huge growth in the traffic coming over the next 5 years. So that's something that would make a difference. But again, if you and I were to just say, let's stop this video call to try and save some energy on the planet, we won't be saving anything in the network. But if a million of us do that for the next 5 years, that would have an impact.
mm, mm.
So anyway,
Fascinating.
to say that's one of the early things that we were working on. But what I really want to do, sort of moving forward with the organization, is a realization that a lot of the thinking we've done needed to be done. Somebody had to straighten some of the ideas. But moving forward, we're kind of out of our honeymoon period, in the sense that
Mm,
the organization was created, and we kind of got up there on the podium and said, hey guys, we've got to get together and make a difference. And we spent a lot of time framing the problem. People are the industry is a little bit impatient now with yet more people with new ideas and great visions and things that they want actionable. Okay, I'm a operator, I'm a device maker, I'm a CDN provider. What can I actually do today to make a difference? And that's what we're working on. So perhaps what I can tell you about moving forward is, what I hope to bring to the
mm,
organization, and my vision of making it as relevant as possible to the industry.
great.
So perhaps what we could do is I'll tell you about this first idea of actionable deliverables, rather than, if you go to our website, there's a bunch of deliverables there. They're all very, very
Mm,
interesting. They're not all yet actionable. They're not all yet things that people can take and then say, oh, great, I'm going to now pin this on my wall and use it to change my code, or use it to change my
mm,
architecture. And that's what we need to work on. So I'll talk a little bit about that with you. Um, I'd like to also bring something that greening of streaming has not failed at, but hasn't really succeeded either, is being a really critical policy resource. Because
mm,
we've known from the outset that in our industry, the policymakers, the regulators, the lawmakers, have major impact on how things are done. And we believe an organization like ours should be central to some of that. We're a member organization, so another
mm,
thing I want to do is to get a better grip. I'm not sure we necessarily need to improve it that much, but we need to better understand how we engage with our members, what benefit they're getting from us, and what it means to be a member of Greening of Streaming. Um, we were a startup kind of organization that was created, as I said, off the back of a conference. Now we're maturing into
mm,
something that's going to be an industry resource. So that means we need to refine our governance and our internal structures and the way we work internally. I can tell you a little bit about some of those
mm,
changes. Um, I think we have a great possibility to enhance the voice we have within the industry. So
Mm.
that's the outreach and the communications. We've already created some really cool stuff that a lot of people don't know about and should know about. So I want to work on that. Um, then I had this funny idea as well, just a minute, we're all about sustainability and we have created an organization that didn't exist before. What's our impact as an
Mm.
organization in terms of sustainability? So I can tell you a little bit about that. The organization, as I said, was started in a very ad hoc fashion, and I want to give it a little bit more financial stability and give it the resources to be able to do some more longer term planning rather than quick and dirty projects. Some of our projects really do need to run over multiple quarters, if not multiple years. And if you're up for it, I'll also give you some ideas of how I expect to hit the ground running my really short-term priorities in
Yeah,
2025,
that's great.
starting this week.
Well, I was wondering as well, you're talking about that when you first started challenging assumptions, that there was assumptions about, sort of bit rate and things like that and energy. And so has that this period, I guess this sort of, as you said, honeymoon period, been about finding out what those significant things are before you can implement them? I guess that's the thing. People may say, what are the actionable things we need to do? But if you just started off with the actionable things, you might have been going in the wrong direction in the first place. Is there some?
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, so we published a paper in this early December or late November on attributional versus consequential approaches to life cycle analysis. And we realized that, of course, you have to start somewhere. So we're not saying all the work that's been done is bad or anything like that, but it was very useful. A lot of the data that's out there is what's called attributional, and it's very useful to understand where the key responsibilities lie, where they help you prioritize things, but it's not actually that useful for an engineering focused organization that wants to fix stuff under the hood.
Mm.
We need what's called consequential data, consequential understanding of when I change something, and I gave you the example of taking the bus or not is an attributional thing. It's quite normal if you say, I'm not going to take the bus today, you can attribute 18 grams or whatever less carbon for your carbon usage that day, and that makes sense for you as an individual. However, for the bus, it makes no difference. It has no consequence.
Mm.
So I'd say that sort of almost philosophical thought process has led us down to when we get our hands dirty under the hood, that we actually have to build stuff from the ground up that is consequence based.
Mm.
And that is why, if we have time, I'd like to tell you about one of our core projects called REM, which stands for Remote Energy Measurement.
Yeah. No, I was
Where
going to just bring that up, which I thought was that, really interesting. And we talked to you on the Flint, you were in one of our Flint forums. We discussed that almost a year ago, I think, when you guys had really just started out.
Yeah, so we've made progress, painfully slow progress, because
Mhm.
there's a lot of difficult data to get. A lot of the streaming ecosystem still has a lot of opacity. A lot of stuff is relatively secret for multiple reasons. But yeah, no, to go back to insights that we create, that we want them to be actionable. As the leader, one thing I will be looking at is any new project we might work on. If it's more theoretical stuff and we need it, sure, we'll do it, but I want to prioritize work that will lead to something that our members and the community at large can actually use to implement.
Mm.
So to define some kind of KPI, something, before we start on a new project, how useful is this going to be in actionable terms? And that
And
doesn't mean,
could that be your members coming to you? Would members, do you think, be willing to do that, to go, we have this problem to solve? Can we put it out to the group and sort of see what we can come up with? Or do you think that could happen, or would people
yeah,
have
well,
been
as I said,
too
we
busy?
are foremost a member-driven organization. My role as the leader isn't to say this is what we must do, this is what we must not do. Obviously, if I have a member that comes up with an issue, then by default, there's no discussion. We will address that issue. If it then leads to a project where we roll our sleeves up and do some, build some kit, put it together, and do some testing and get some results from it, or whether it stays a discussion, that will depend on a case by case thing. Luckily, we've never had contention where one member wants to do plan A and one member wants to do plan B. We'll solve that problem when we get to it. Let's not fix things that aren't broken. We haven't had to address that yet, but from a concrete perspective, realistically, sorry, I'm bilingual. I sometimes use French words in English. Concrete perspective doesn't make any sense in English. Realistically, what I want to do is to prioritize our REM work, because that is absolutely critical to build in the bits that are missing today. We have a relatively good understanding at the encoder side, sort of the very beginning of the streaming workflow. So you encode the stuff, and then you're going to send it through various components of the network. And we have we just have the two extremes at the moment, the two edges. So we can measure live stuff happening in the encoder, and we can measure what that actually does to the devices at the end in their energy consumption. And so find out that, and what we're doing, working. I just come out of a meeting with an ISP. That's one of our key targets, is to bring an ISP on board, so that we can see when we change things in streaming infrastructure, what does it change in the energy consumption at the ISP level. We're also working at the CDN level. So those are the two key missing components, the origin server and CDN on the one hand, the ISP. We've got the two other parts solved for now. So that's a key priority, and something that's very, very, hopefully going to be very actionable, and will lead to all stakeholders in the streaming ecosystem to understand what they can do to affect their energy impact. And one thing we forgot to say at the very outset is I only use the word energy. I don't use the word carbon. Of course, carbon is critical, and that's the end goal, is to reduce our carbon consumption. But we are engineers and streaming engineers before anything else. We're not climate experts, and we believe that we should work with stuff that we understand, that we can directly impact, and others will take our energy data and turn that into carbon. Maybe one day in the long-term future we'll start talking carbon, because we'll then have the tools to be able to do it not effectively, but reliably. That's the word I was looking for. We have another.
Is it worth knowing there, in terms of carbon? Is it worth knowing where, if there are any, kind of where the carbon intensity is in streaming? Like, is it like sort of tracking down, like if for some reason you discovered, oh, there's very little carbon in the TV manufacturing, which is a weird thing to say now, but then you might want to focus that on one area over another.
I hear you're quite right, and of course, and I'm very conscious that we're only addressing part of the problem, but we've got our eyes open, and we know the problem has all of this scope, and we're currently working on this scope of it. So the embedded carbon aspect is kind of present and in our mind. We're not working on it now consciously, because we don't want to set ourselves up to fail. We want to be able to do something that we can actually get the ball rolling and start having results in matters of weeks and months rather than years. And doing the whole life cycle analysis, including the embedded carbon, is not something we're going to be doing in the short term. As I said, there will come a time when we will be ready to do it, and by that time, those other organizations and experts working on things like embedded carbon will presumably have more accessible models and easier ways for us to use it. But at the moment, it's a conscious choice to leave part of the problem aside. We know we're only solving part of the problem, but it'll be very quick to bring a holistic picture back together. It's just simply because we're a member-driven organization, as I said, and our members, that's where they've brought us to. They're saying, let's do stuff that we can actually work on today and see the results immediately. But
Mhm.
of course, you're quite right. Embedded carbon is whether it's in the TV sets, whether I mean, there's different aspects of it. Mobile phone carbon issue is very high because of the short lifespan of these devices.
Mhm.
A typical TV will last 5 years or more, whereas a typical phone is half that time. And all those issues are very present in our mind, but we're not actually working on models with them right now. We're
Mhm.
hoping to work with academics and people who are better than us at that. We want to focus on the area where we are the experts, which is the streaming engineering. But just to talk about the actionable stuff. So I said our remote energy management REM project is absolutely critical. I know 100% that we are going to be working, and a lot of our resources will be spent on that in 2025. There's another project which might use up a lot of our resources in 2025. I'm not sure. We're calling it at the moment EPing. It's not at all the definitive name, but it's a nice name that Dom came up with, because basically, any techie person knows this little tool called ping. It's actually a command line you can use. You say ping, and you give it an IP address or even a URL, and it'll work through it'll work the IP address out, and then it'll just tell you the latency. It'll just go and talk to that device, say, hey, you there? And the device say, yes, I'm here, and it'll measure the time it took. It's a kind of latency measurement tool, and it's been around for over 40 years. And we realized that, okay, so latency has been part of network infrastructure forever, but energy hasn't. So how can we go to a device out there and say, hey, Mr. Device, router, encoder, whatever you are, cache, how much power are you using right now? Could you tell me? There is no way of doing that. It's not part of the infrastructure. It's not part of any protocol. And so we've been asking standards organizations to help us with that. And so far, we've never really come up with something. So the last article I actually published on your journal on the Flint is a little story about how we came to EPing and actually did a lot more than what we thought we'd do. We thought we'd just describe it and take it to a SDO, and we did some work with AI, and it ended up actually doing more than describe. It's actually a really deep description with even some code snippets and stuff like that. So we have a clear idea of what that protocol could be. It would be implemented on devices. It would make a huge difference, because you could then, in live, we wouldn't need to build whole infrastructure to measure energy. We could just go to any device in the network and say, hey, how much energy are you using right now? Or how much energy have you used in the last hour, or whatever, and it would give us that answer back. And so we plan to take that project to the IETF in just a matter of weeks, one of their next big meetings. And I'm hoping that they will like the idea and say, that's cool, we'll include it in some other work we're doing, or we'll actually work on it. We don't mind. We don't need to own it. We just need somebody who's competent, and we're not, but somebody who's competent in defining a standard that would let the network's components talk to each other with energy information. That's something really important. So as I'm saying, I don't yet know how much of our resources will be used in 2025 on that project. It may take longer than we hope to talk to people before anything happens, or they may take it away from us and say, okay, let the big boys do it. We'll come back to you next year with the result, and then we'll just wait, or maybe we'll be involved. I don't know. We'd like to be involved. We'll see, but we're quite conscious of the fact we're not a standards organization. We don't intend to be one. So that's a key one. And just to finish off on this actionable side of things, turning our work more actionable. I just want to simplify a lot of our deliverables and always have the drive of any of our members who's working on a deliverable, on the minutes of a meeting or anything. Okay, what are the actions and deliverable? It's a little bit artificial. I know it. In the best of all possible worlds, I wouldn't need to do that. We'd have another few years to really clarify our thought, and things would naturally turn out. But I realize that we're in the real world, and people have to choose, am I going to work with greening of streaming or do it on my own? Am I going to do this? And we have to be an attractive value proposition to current members and potential new members. Therefore, we're having this drive to make things more actionable, which unfortunately means I will be deprioritizing other high-level work that doesn't have anything actionable. So yeah, we will still be doing some of the high-level thought process work because some needs to be done, but I'll be trying to dedicate more resources to actionable stuff, because if we don't do that, this end of honeymoon period means that we'll gradually be less relevant to the industry, because it's nice to have guys who have great ideas, but people want people who can advise them on what they can do today in their networks. So that was basically it on that first point, that I think we need to become much more actionable and less theoretical.
Nice. So then the next you were saying, I can't remember what the next point you were going to discuss, but I think,
it was policy was the next one.
yeah.
And the idea about policy is basically, it has always been a goal of greening of streaming. This isn't something new I'm bringing to greening of streaming. It's always been in greening of streaming's DNA.
Because you had a launch event. Was it even a launch? It was a very early event at Parliament, the House of Parliament.
Yeah, which shows how much. Yeah, I mean, Dom has always been very strong on that. But again, this is a member-led organization, so that wasn't the key, most important priority. And I think we must be conscious of the little mistakes we make, and you learn from them. And when you talk to policy people, whether it's members of parliament or regulators or whatever, and you say, we are the experts in the greening of streaming issue, and come to us and they'll listen to you and say fine, and then they'll forget about you, and then they'll carry on doing their work. And we're very lucky to have some high level advice from an expert in this area called Phil Reed, and I'm very much hoping that he's going to be able to help us this year. Who's an expert in policy and public affairs. He says, well, when you talk to a regulator, you don't come to them and say how great you are. You come to them and say, we need this, and this regulations done. And then you become present in their mindset, and they will think of you. And the next time they're thinking about this, oh yeah, let's ask greening of streaming what they think about this. And so that is one of our early 2025 projects, to clarify that. We have a few ideas to kick it off with that work, but typically there's some really simple ideas. Another one from Dom was, he said, well, why don't we ask policymakers to mandate that people in the streaming ecosystem do something really simple. It will cost them literally 20 minutes when they do their end of year reports, is just to publish their energy consumption, just the bills they pay to their energy provider. That's part of reporting of people in the tech space. People in the tech space, when they do their end of, CSRD, there's all these things about what people must report and that's a really, really simple ask. And then you'd see that, this particular stakeholder that has this particular role in the streaming ecosystem, every year they use so many megawatts, terawatts, whatever, depending on how big they are. And we see that energy growth or decrease over time, depending on their customer base. And we can say, wow, they are becoming more energy efficient, or they're becoming less energy efficient. And it cuts through the debate about green energy, because some people say, yeah, but green energy doesn't really exist, because, you still have to build the windmills and you still have to maintain them, and they're still made out of plastic and whatever. Let's not get into those debates. Just measure the pure energy consumption compared to the streaming services you deliver, and see how that evolves. So that's a really, really simple ask. There are other asks. We've realized that, for example, in storage of data, there's a lot of redundant storage that is induced by regulations. So the first regulation is one we say, we'd like you to put some kind of regulation. Others, we'd like to say, are you conscious that for rights management, and we want rights to be managed, and we want authors to be compensated for their work and things, but there are better ways of doing things. The way some regulations are set up, for example, with audio streaming. So you take one of the big libraries of the big companies like Spotify, like Amazon Music or Apple Music, any one of these libraries will be about a petabyte of data. Okay, 1 petabyte of data in scale of the world isn't that huge, but for regulatory reasons, they often have to duplicate those in multiple territories. In some markets, they'll need a copy sitting in the market for which they're selling. So the same song that's being streamed all over the world will actually be copied in lots of different versions, and not one song. It's the 110 million songs these all have, and there's 4 or 5 top tier companies out there. There's another 10 or 20 low tier, and they're all copied all throughout many markets for rights management reasons. And we said, well, why don't we revisit that from a tech perspective? There would be tech ways of solving the rights issues without actually having to duplicate all this storage. This particular storage is because there's a lot of back catalog there. There's a lot of songs that are played once every 5 years. The front catalog doesn't matter, that's the block, the things that everybody's listening to all the time. Then you get other regulation in some countries, like in Germany. There's something to do with video, which is also a multi-petabyte problem, where when you're watching live content, as soon as you go and use one of your trick modes to press play back, you go back, you press pause, and you're no longer part of the live stream, the operator then has to create a individual stream for you by law. So for rights management, again, huge amount of wastage there. So that's another area we'd like to look into. There are a few other ideas we have. So policy. To go back to the beginning of this, we want to hit the policy guys with some clear demands rather than just say, let's have a talk, because we tried that, failed, and we understand it's normal that you learn through your mistakes. And so we hope to develop much more regular policy briefs, to establish some partnerships with various advocacy groups and things like that. And I'm looking to my expert Phil Reed to help me with that.
Is there anything around? I know that it's a bit outside of your domain, but there's a lot of everybody's talking about AI, and AI energy use, and that's something that government is sort of wrestling with right now. It seems like, in my view, that they're getting bulldozed and steamrolled by a lot of the hyperscalers and big data infrastructure companies. But I don't know if there's anything you can say about AI, and also maybe something about that. How does government avoid? How does government stay informed in a way that it can defend itself when a multi-billion-dollar company says we're going to do this tech thing, and the government really has no idea what they're talking about?
Well, I can't really answer that on behalf of greening and streaming, because we haven't really honestly done any specific work on AI. We use AI ourselves internally but that's just sort of large language models to help in content production and code generation, because we're a teeny team internally, and using AI makes us just more efficient. To go to the, I'm taking my greening of streaming hat off for a second, and just me, Ben Schwarz. I certainly believe that AI can be helpful in one thing, is that if you look over the last couple of decades, I was a software developer for about 10 years in the 90s, a long time ago, at the time when it was just the end of compute resource from the beginning of computers, basically, in the early networks. The most expensive resource was the machines that were really, really expensive. And so we did everything we could to optimize the use of them. And then gradually, as computing and networks became a big thing, having good software developers was the most critical part of the value chain. We did everything we could for several decades to lower the cost of manpower, because that was the most expensive thing for Microsoft in the early days. You know, most of their budget would go on paying the salaries for the best developers and stuff like that. And the code bases were getting so big, and we ended up solving that problem with architectures. Typically, you talk about, you know, multiple layers of software, and we had to make software reusable. So typically, software, even when it's running on a network, if you want it to be reusable, you have to write it in a very accessible way so that it lasts long, it's easy to read for other people. It wasn't written to be efficient anymore. The early code had to be really efficient because the costly thing was running the computer, or the network. All the hardware was really expensive. And Moore's law, you know, which you're familiar with, that was that basically hardware got about twice as powerful every 18 months at the same cost, meant that and people were the critical also. So the kind of software we build today is very, very inefficient. And I'm getting to AI. I'm not rapping. And so this is my personal idea, is that for all its evils in terms of what it does in data centers, AI, one thing it could bring us back is let us go back to the early days of computing, where we could actually write code that's really efficient, because we could forget about all that need to make the code really reusable in all its multiple software layers that it goes through, and write code that's really efficient. It serves one purpose really well, really efficiently, rather than trying to be a jack of all trades and being very inefficient. And the reason we could do that is AI, because then the developers would become much more prolific. They'd be able to solve a much more complicated problem in one go. And so this is the problem. They could start with a blank sheet, and thanks to AI, build all the missing bits, but in the most cost-effective way for that use. And we could do that in the way, so the way we build technology, AI could make us do it in a much more cost-effective way, because we wouldn't have to leverage all these existing components that aren't really efficient. But because manpower is so expensive, we have to take this old component and reuse it, because to redevelop a slightly more efficient one would cost an extra 2 months of developer time. And I'm the manager of this project, and I say, sod that, I'm not doing that. I'm taking the existing component, and yes, the computer will be a bit less efficient, but who cares? So yeah, AI will do that. But I'm afraid I don't really have an answer to your initial question on AI and governments. And yeah, we are entering a scary world, I think, with the results of the not so much the US election, but who's actually pulling the strings in the most powerful economy of the world, and what the agenda there is going to make for a very interesting and complex thing. So yeah, that was policy, which is one of my changes. And moving forward on what you originally asked me, I think as a member-driven organization, we need a little bit more clarity on how we work with our members. So I'm back to greening and streaming here. How we develop we maintain our vibrant member-driven community. So we have sometimes hackathons and meetings where the juices are flowing, and you really see, this is what it's all about. They're a little bit spaced out throughout the year, and sometimes we have quiet moments where we need to find other ways of engaging people. So that's something I need to work on. Perhaps that means segmenting the membership a bit more, and realizing that we have different kinds of members that need to be spoken to differently, need to be offered different kind of activities. I've been in lots of member-driven organizations, professional organizations over the years, and there's this strange KPI, which you see in lots of human organizations, including social networks and things like that, is that when you have a large enough sample of people, you find it's usually somewhere around 20% of the population that do all the talking. If you look on on Facebook, if you look on LinkedIn, if you look on, about 80% of LinkedIn users rarely post. They'll only post when they change their job like twice a year. The actual posters, regular posters. And so the question is, in a member-driven organization, is that a fair target? So should we have, 20, 30% of our members that are active and involved in projects, and a large percent that are there to listen basically and take it all in? I'm not sure. So that's something I want to work out, improve outreach, and kind of linked with the way we work internally. As I said, now that we're growing up, we're no longer a kind of startup organization that was created off the back of one conference meeting. I want to kind of enhance our structure and our governance, and to make it more efficient and mature. So one of the things is, as the leader of the organization, I feel I need to have some kind of structure to which I report. So we're setting up a board, and I will be reporting into the board, and then a slightly smaller group of 4 or 5 of us, call it kind of an executive committee. And I want to clarify, we have at the moment 2 key roles with very important people, and that's the same in all organizations, is our working group leads, people who, we have 9 working groups, and leading a working group is the life and blood of any organization. And whether you're in large things like Sympathy or smaller ones like us, it's the same story. So find a way of giving value to that role, and making it a two-way street. So I have set up, as I said, a starting list of a 12-person board. I don't think it's necessarily worth going into more detail on that. But the following point was outreach, if you want to go to the next one.
Yeah. So you're right now with outreach. I guess that also includes your, like, for example, you do the monthly articles at the Flint, but also you work with other organizations like Media Tech Sustainability Series, and there's quite a few other organizations out there that kind of end up being good places, I guess, to show yourself. But what are you looking at in terms of how you might do that?
Well, we'd like to expand our reach a little bit, because we realize that what we've produced so far already is not known by many. We're just bringing in a major new member, and I went through various discussions with them to show them and say, "Oh, you've already done that." Oh, I was a bit off. People working sustainability, I hope they'd found it. So we haven't done a great job on that. We have to improve that. I'm just having a mini little audit done of our communications thing, and the first thing that came up with the lady who's helping me is she just took her 3 minutes or something, and she just put 4 different extracts from websites, including the Flint, and the tagline that's used to describe greening of streaming. She found me 4 different taglines from 4 different websites, and they say 4 different things. So that's mea culpa, or I don't know how you say that in the plural. I'm not good at Latin, but basically we have to fix that. We have to have a clear, what is our tagline, and make sure that everybody, including you at the Flint, have the right tagline. We need to be better at promoting what we do. I think what we're doing with REM that we talked about is really fascinating and critical and important for the industry, and we haven't succeeded in having enough people realize how important it is, and either joining us or at least following our developments there. We have, in terms of social media nowadays, it's basically LinkedIn and LinkedIn and LinkedIn. I mean, there isn't that much else. I mean, we could do a YouTube channel, but I mean, I don't think anybody really wants to become active on X anymore. So our LinkedIn channel.
Bluehost?
Sorry?
Bluehost?
Blue Sky.
I mean, Blue Sky. I always say Bluehost. Bluehost is my web provider. Yeah, Blue Sky.
Yeah, perhaps. Well, that's so again, the kind of leader I am, I wouldn't take such a decision on my own. I'd bring that. We have the appropriate working group, which is called Working Group 2. Neil Howman gives us some help in Working Group 2 from time to time. and I'd bring that idea to. So yeah, I'll tell them in our next meeting that Neil Romanek suggested Blue Sky. What do you guys think? And if they think Blue
There's a
Sky.
lot of good climate stuff on there. There's a lot of scientists there. It's very
Okay,
sciencey.
well, thanks for that idea. That may make sense. But the first thing that we know we're going to do is to put together some kind of LinkedIn strategy to build a bit of our community on LinkedIn, because that does seem to be one of the places it goes. And then you talked about MTSS, the Flint. There's Faultline. We have a very good relationship with Faultline, so I want to make sure that those good relationships stay good, that we use the channels we have access to the most cost effectively. I don't like the word cost effectively, the most effectively as possible. And yeah, just basically it's about improving our content distribution. So obviously we need to produce more content, but before we do that, we have to be better at distributing our content and getting it noticed. So that's one of my important objectives for 2025. And then there was this completely new pie in the sky idea, but I honestly don't know whether I'll be able to implement it, to what extent. In my own personal journey in sustainability, I discovered this thing called regenerative finance last year, and I sat in on a course by an amazing guy called John Fullerton, who was a Wall Street guy for many years and woke up one day in 1999, I think, and said, this isn't working. And he went on his own personal journey for quite a few years. And then in 2005, created an organization called the Capital Institute. And it's all about, so I can't explain regenerative finance in one word, but just two simple ideas. One is, in there, they kind of define life. What is life with a capital L? Life on the planet. So biological life, our bodies, our societies, a microorganism, any form of life, the life of nature. How does it work? And in terms of granularity, kind of spent many years with biologists, various kinds, and they came up with the eight principles of life. Whether they're right or wrong doesn't really matter. It's just he has these 8 principles, and these are the principles that life respects to work on the world. And then he said, okay, let's use the same granularity and define how finance works. Here are the 8, 9, 10 principles of finance. And notice how I put them there and them there. If you draw a circle around them, they don't touch each other, the circles. There isn't one of the principles of life that is also a principle of finance. To give you an example is just take growth, for example. The idea of growth. How does growth work in life? Growth in life always respects a version of the S-curve. Basically, you start, there's nothing, and then all of a sudden you're brought into existence, whether you're talking about an organism, a cell, a body, a society, a herd of cows, whatever. It starts really small, really, really small, and the growth is really imperceptible, and then it starts speeding up, and it becomes exponential for a while. Typically, if you're thinking of your own body or your child, it's adolescence. And then you get into adulthood, and in adulthood, you have a plateau. And then obviously, if you're talking about a single body, you get death. And if you're talking about a society or a herd, you can stay on that plateau forever. But even a herd would never grow forever in the world, because they run out of resources, and nature will fix that. And they will reach a plateau. And if I say to you, hey, Neil, give me $1,000 of your savings. I'm going to invest them for you. I have this amazing investment. It's an S-curve investment. I'll say, Ben, are you joking? I mean, there's no way you give me your money. I mean, you'll ask for one of two things. You'll either ask for a straight line, 2% per year or 3% per year, or whatever economic environment we're in, or you'll say, no, put it in cryptocurrency. I want exponential growth. I want to take risk. But so that's one example. There are many other examples. There's the idea that we live, I'll just give one more example. We live in a mechanistic and deterministic and reductionist, sorry, my English, world. And so, for example, if you're running the Flint and you and Neil spend a lot of time, you hire a few people, and you get it really working really, really well, and you're producing much more content, and it's everything, and you'll say, whoa, we created this really well-oiled machine. And that's just showing in your mindset, that's a mechanistic view. And a typical manager of an organization or a team will try and create a well-oiled machine. And that there's something wrong with that. That doesn't work, because it's showing that we are living people with feelings, and we have lives, and you know, we go to bed at night, and we're not a machine. We never were, we never will be, and we never should be. So typically you shouldn't aim to try and create a well. Perhaps you should use something that's more from that area of life, to say, how's life good? Well, life forms, a good attribute of a life form is its resilience. So as a manager, I'm going to create a resilient structure. I'm going to make my company more resilient. That would be, so there's lots of little, I was talking earlier about actionable, pie in the sky ideas, what's actionable. These are actionable things we can start doing. And so in this area of leading by example, I want to try, I'm not making any commitments, because it depends on my members. If they follow, if the members say, Ben, stop wasting our time, I will listen to my members. But I hope I can make the sale to them that we should start thinking, and even in the area that's very, very precise and very deep tech of video streaming, we can start bringing this regenerative mindset into the way we think of things. And there's other really simple things which we've never really thought, is our own footprint on the planet. So, I mean, Dom was very clear on that last year he only took the plane to go to a conference if he had another reason to take it too. He would never go for a conference just to talk about grading of streaming. He would only take the plane if his other software company also needed him to go. And so I want to implement typical things like that. And maybe, again, I don't know if it makes sense on our small scale, but to measure our own carbon footprint. And to think about things. I told you my two key projects this year. One is REM, and the other was Ep011. Now, if we look about them with a holistic vision and a kind of regenerative attitude, well, actually, if I can, I should reduce the energy on REM and make Ep011 much more important, because they kind of serve the same service, but one requires deploying new infrastructure, and the other is just using what's out there. So clearly, from a holistic sustainability perspective, I should try and prioritize, but then it's a very difficult, complicated chessboard, because I need to do what works. You know, there's no point me just pushing Ep011 if Ep011 doesn't work, and then there'll be nothing left of greening and streaming. So I want to try and maybe set to ask, so this is some work I'll do with the board and the members. Does it make sense for us to set our own net zero targets? I mean, it may be a bit silly because we're so small, or maybe it does make sense. I'm really not sure about that. And I want to try and, one of the things I'd like to get one of the working groups to work on is, it's a personal hobby horse of mine, is video conferencing. Is there any ways we can improve our video conferencing? So, for example, I'm using a screensaver right now because I'm unfortunately in my room and there's a lot of mess behind me. And I don't want everybody to see that mess. But that means that my Mac is doing a little bit of processing to get the contour of my face. So there's a bit of, so I'm wasting some power right now, and I'm unhappy with that. But I'm less unhappy than you seeing the mess behind me. But I don't yet have an idea. Is this significant? Is this just barely visible on the thing, or how many tens of millions of concurrent Zooms are going on at any one time in the world? And if we told everybody to actually take off, as you have, you've got a real background, I can tell. Does that make a difference? And maybe I should say, well, actually, if you could have a black curtain behind you, you'd save even more power. It was Barbara Lang, who's a key person in our organization. She has a background, and her background is black. So that's really interesting. So therefore, the screen will be using much less power, but her computer is still having to do the work to cut her face out from the black background. So that could be a fun little project to do to
That's
try and
like that's
our own.
if you want to save, save some energy, then just clean your room.
Yeah, so you've got all those books behind you. Perhaps if you had books with darker covers, I can see most of them have white covers. There's one or two black books there, and try and get more black books in your
Yeah, yeah,
shelf.
there we go. Yeah,
Spend
yeah.
Probably spend 5 hours a day and on that Zoom.
Well, that's like something we
But
didn't
then I
cover.
have no idea whether we're just barking
Yeah.
up the wrong tree and this is actually imperceptible in this thing, or maybe it would
Mm,
have a thing. I don't know. But so these are some of the ideas that, to actually practice what we preach and think about the way
mm,
we operate as an organization. And what's nice about that video streaming, that the video conference thing, is it is video, so it is in our
mm.
within our remit to try and think about that. And I'd love call out if anybody knows anybody. I'd love to meet somebody from Zoom, the organization, and see if they'd at least help us think about this and maybe even consider joining us.
So but
Uh,
this is a bit based on the again, which is maybe not something that's maybe people guess, but not widely understood, but that you've shown that a black screen consumes less energy than a white screen generally,
yeah,
right? I mean,
yeah,
you were doing the tests with the energy measurement test with
yeah.
actual TV sets.
Yeah, there's no doubt. We are talking, typically with a large scale, the 55-inch screen TV, we are multiple tens of watts, would make a difference. So simply if you have a ticker, at the bottom of your screen 24 hours a day, if that ticker has a dark background rather than a white background, you will make a difference. If CNN, the ticker that's in maybe a million airports, or there aren't a million airports, but there's in most airports, there's 5 or 6 of them, or 10 or 12 of them. So there probably are at least hundreds of thousands of those tickets in public spaces on large, very bright screens. If they had a dark background consistently, that would have a measurable impact.
Mm.
But yeah, so that finishes basically that finishes that angle, and I just had one last angle which I want to bring is that the organization has had its financial ups and downs throughout the years, and currently we're not in an ideal situation. We have enough money to take us through to well into the end of the quarter, and so I either have to slightly reduce our burn rate to get to the next renewal period, because we live exclusively off membership things. So to think about other revenue streams, but otherwise to find a way of giving enough financial stability because a lot of the energy that I've expended since I've been here has been worrying about that, and that's very unproductive. I want to stop worrying about that. So find a better way of doing that.
Yeah,
And
if people are serious about sustainability, they need to reach into their pockets.
yes, yes, but I mean that's easier said than done.
Mm.
And we have some amazing members that have done that. And I mean, some of our founding members have renewed now 4 times. People like Akamai and people like Broadpeak have been since the beginning. A few others. I don't know everything by heart yet. I'm only picking up speed on this. And as I said, we've got one big new member joining in January, so I'm excited about that. So to finish off, just maybe to summarize all of that, my short-term plan, and this is being recorded, so I'm feeling very, very exposed here, because somebody can watch this video in 6 months' time and say, did he do what he said he'd do? But what I plan to do in the very short term is to put together some kind of membership KPI to try and have a better understanding is, are we serving our members well at the moment? It's a very delicate balance, because each member has different expectations from their organization. And as I speak to you today, I don't really have a handle on, maybe most of our members are quite happy with what we're doing, and maybe some of them are unhappy, and I need to get a better understanding of that. I want to focus a lot on REM, remote energy management platform, expanding its compatibility to more devices and talking to other parts of the network and stuff like that. I want to put together the LinkedIn So you can measure me on that in 6 months' time. Do we have an active LinkedIn community? I will be running an internal strategy workshop at the end of this quarter. So I want some time to get up to speed. And so when I feel ready, I want to run a strategy workshop with all the key stakeholders. So a few of the large members and all the people that would be willing to serve on a board or something like that, to re-examine our priorities, to reassert our core values. Said we had a lot of clarity when we started out 4 years ago, and we need to reassert that and potentially to refocus things. I want to re-examine our membership tiers. They're very, very simple now. There's just your member or non-member, and then the tiers is just based on how big a company you are. And perhaps we need to separate between if you're a content provider of a broadcaster or a streamer versus a tech provider. And what about, more to find a way that academics or academia would find it interesting to join us. As I said, focus on actionable input. That again, you can measure me on in 6 months' time and see, is what we've been outputting in the last 6 months been more actionable than the previous six months. And then I do have longer term vision. I want to revisit the organization's structure and bylaws and stuff like that, but I won't start that before maybe Q2, maybe S2. I want the first 3 months to do those first things. So that's how I'm intending to hit the ground running.
That's great. Well, I look forward to checking in with you again to see how we're doing.
Yeah.
3 months from now, 6 months from now, and I know that you'll be continuing to publish, I hope, continue to publish material on the Flint. And you were, that you
That
were one
depends
of
very
our.
much on you, the work I do, because you are the guy with the whip that hounds me. Ben, where's my article?
We
Ben,
need
where's
something.
my article?
But you were the Greening and Streaming was one of our founding sponsors. So, we could say that this might not have happened without you guys. So, we're very grateful for that. And hopefully this will be in imitating life, that there will be some symbiosis and, sort of
Yes, I will.
a relationship where the two of us continue to help each other out.
Okay. Well,
So
thank you
thank you
very
so
much.
much. Great so much to talk to you, Ben.
Thank you for the opportunity, Neil.
And we'll talk soon.
Okay. Bye.